Oh, Snezhnaya's first livestream. I wonder what they're gonna reveal. All Khaenri'ahs are descendants of the Tsaritsa? Wait, what? Yeah, I'm not even going to do the normal intro for this one. The Genshin devs just dropped the single biggest lore bomb I have ever seen come out of a livestream. And I need to get straight into it. And look, I love a good clickbait or catchy phrase as much as the next channel, but this is not that. This is not clickbait. I repeat, this is not clickbait. They came out and said that all Khaenri'ahs are descendants of the Tsaritsa. Okay, so what does that actually mean? Now get comfortable, settle in, because Minsleif is about to tell you a bedtime story. And it comes from an in-game book called Hymns of the Far North. It starts with a young man named Satalainen. Cheerful, fair, kind-hearted, noble-born, and nobly raised. The gentle and valiant hero type. He rides across the forsaken Isle of Hisi and into Pohjola, a dark, fog-shrouded island in the far north that the gods had sealed off. All this to court a woman, the daughter of Pakaisuko. But Satalainen isn't just some random young lad. He is the third descender, one of only 4 known beings who transcend above Teyvat's laws and can actually influence its fate. Pakaisuko, or Father Frost, was a fae who served the Hyperboreans. Satalainen was in love with Pakaisuko's daughter, Snegurotchka, and Pakaisuko agrees to the marriage proposal, but on one condition. Satalainen can have his daughter's hand only if he opens the gates of Pohjola. Sounds simple until you realize it's a trap. Opening those gates means trespassing into the seat of the heavenly principles, and that carries a death sentence. And Satalainen knew. He understood exactly what this was, and he walked into this trap anyways. Why? Because if he refused, Pakaisuko would have taken the punishment out on his own daughter, the woman he loved, instead. So he walked into his own execution to spare her. Inside Pohjola, the heavenly principles killed him. They carved his body into 7 pieces. And those 7 pieces became the 7 Gnosis, the powerful devices the 7 Archons ended up carrying. His lover was left a widow before she was ever a bride, condemned to never marry again. Now, if that woman, the daughter of Pakaisuko, the snow maiden Snegurotchka, is the Tsaritsa, then we already know a lot about her story. The Gnosis she has spent the entire story hunting down are these scattered remains of her lover. Her whole war on Celestia partly involves revenge. Keep in mind this is still a theory. And then there's this detail I can't stop thinking about, especially after the Sudden Snow trailer. After his death, Satalainen's name became unspeakable, erased. He survives only as an anonymous lost hero. Satalainen roughly translates to islander, or one who comes from an island. It makes me wonder if that's even his real name, or is it a code name given to the third descender by the Hyperboreans because his real name is unspeakable? I'm guessing saying it might incur the wrath of the heavenly principles. Alright, so how does this story tie back into that insane reveal that all Khaenri'ahs are descendants of the Tsaritsa? What I'm about to say relies on 2 theories to be true. First, that the Tsaritsa is Snegurotchka, the lover of the third descender. Second, that the Tsaritsa and Satalainen, the third descender, had children together. Neither of those have been confirmed as of now. These are theories, and for the rest of this video, I'm going to be walking through said theories. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Okay, if both of those are true, this means every Khaenri'ah descends from the children of the Tsaritsa and Satalainen, which means Khaenri'ahs have the blood of a descender running through their veins. Now, if you're the heavenly principles, suddenly Khaenri'ah looks a lot scarier, right? Picture an entire nation carrying the blood and maybe the power of the third descender. Because here's the thing, the only force strong enough to stand against a descender is another descender. So if that's what Khaenri'ah really is, a nation of descenderlings, then the heavenly principles has every reason to be afraid of them. And there's a piece of in-game evidence that makes this fit a little too well. René de Petrichor, the infamous Fontaine researcher, defined a descender as a being whose will can rival the entire world. He also theorized that humans and beings from Teyvat could become descenders, not just aliens. Now think about Khaenri'ah. It's the one nation that reached greatness with no Archon, no Gnosis, and not a single vision. Just human alchemy, engineering, and defiance built into its very principles and foundation. What if Khaenri'ahs, maybe specifically pure Khaenri'ahs, contain the will of a descender, in their blood. This means Khaenri'ah truly was exceptional, the only known nation whose people descended from an actual descender. This also means the Cataclysm and Renova's curse become exceptionally cruel. Remember what it took to kill Satalainen. The Heavenly Principles couldn't just strike him down. They carved him into 7 pieces to essentially neutralize him. Not to mention, they had already waged a near world-ending war against the Dragon King Nibelung, who is implied to have been the second descender. Now picture the blood and potentially power of a descender spread through an entire nation. A nation that grows, has children, and multiplies on its own. You can dismember one being, but you can't dismember an entire nation. From what we know so far, King Irmin's attempt to harness the Abyss was one of the main catalysts behind Khaenri'ah's fall and the Cataclysm. While I think Khaenri'ah's involvement with the Abyss was the main reason the Heavenly Principles destroyed it, doing so would have also eliminated any threat posed by an entire nation that descended from a descender. So not only was Khaenri'ah destroyed, but Renova also placed the curse of immortality on its pure-blooded survivors. Capitano condemned the punishment as indiscriminate and cruel, since most Khaenri'ahns were innocent and knew nothing about King Irmin's or the Five Sinners' actions. But the curse of immortality doesn't just punish Khaenri'ah, it also contains it. Here's the logic. Death in Teyvat isn't an off switch, for lack of a better term. When something dies, its soul and memories cycle back into the ley lines and into Irminsul, well, now Aru. And descenders by definition are a will that can rival that of the worlds, and they're also not recorded in Irminsul. So put those facts together and you get a real problem. If you kill the descendant of a descender, where does that essence or soul go? The curse of immortality and the curse of the wilderness prevent Khaenri'ahns from returning to the natural cycle of life and death, leaving their souls trapped in curse-eroding bodies. The purebloods got immortality with their minds intact, which is arguably the crueler sentence, since it means living forever with the regret. The mixed ancestry Khaenri'ahns like Khaenri'ah and Diridith got the wilderness curse instead and became the hilichurls and monsters we fight today. So because Khaenri'ahns can't die, their souls or data can't go into the ley lines. People with the blood or power of a descender, essentially a will that can rival an entire world, being inside the ley lines might be a problem for someone like the Heavenly Principles. All of this also tells us that the Tsaritsa might be really old, like probably as old as Zhongli old. The Gnosis were made from Satalainen's body, which means he had to exist before they did. And the Gnosis were already around going into the Archon War roughly 6,000 years ago. So Satalainen predates all of that, and that seems to line up with when Khaenri'ah was founded. Think back to the War of Funerary Flame, the war between the Heavenly Principles and the Dragon King Nibelung, where the world and the moons got torn apart. That's the war that wiped out entire civilizations like Salvin Dagnir, the one that used to sit on top of what's now Dragonspine. And there's a specific item that pins the date for us. The Scribe's box from the Dragonspine World Quest mentions hearing of people building a new nation without gods, one that might have the power to stand against this world. That's Khaenri'ah in its earliest form, and that's about 6,000 years ago. Satalainen and the Tsaritsa could have had children before the War of Funerary Flame. Those children grow up and go on to have their own, and generations down the line, you get the civilization of Khaenri'ah. Now, I know exactly where some of your minds just went. Does this mean Khaenri'ahns are, keeping it in the family? Their family tree is a wreath? No, and here's why. Khaenri'ah has been around for something like 6,000 years, so by the time you're that many generations deep, the bloodline is very diluted. On top of that, Khaenri'ahns weren't a single pure-blooded people to begin with. They were also a mix, people from all over Teyvat who moved to Khaenri'ah and settled there for generations. Khaenri'ah's own mother, for instance, had roots in Mondstadt. While yes, the Khaenri'ahn aristocracy was famously obsessed with pure blood, I don't think that held for the rest of the population at all. And this is where it gets kind of poetic and makes me tear up a little. Khaenri'ah spent its entire existence hunting for a descender. The Crimson Moon Dynasty was fixated on finding one. The Eclipse Dynasty went as far as tracking the arrival of the Traveler and their sibling from outside the world. This whole nation searched the heavens for a descender and never once thought to look at itself. The very thing they were chasing was in their own blood the entire time. According to the 7.0 livestream, alchemy is straight up banned in Snezhnaya, partly so that Snezhnaya doesn't end up becoming another Khaenri'ah or Hyperborea. Alchemy was the exact thing Khaenri'ah excelled at, especially chemia, the art of creating life. What I'm about to say is only a theory. If the blood of a descender spread across an entire nation over thousands of years, it would naturally become more diluted with each generation, right? In other words, Khaenri'ahns may still carry what I'm calling the will of a descender, but it has been scattered so widely that it remains mostly dormant. That would mean the Tsaritsa's direct children, potentially, carried the highest concentration of that power. From Khaenri'ah's perspective, those first descendants, Tsaritsa's direct children, could have represented something close to a primordial human. This may connect to Reindaughter's primordial human project. We know she was attempting to create an artificial human through alchemy, but it is possible that her greater goal was to recreate the qualities of those original descendants, or children. A human whose will could eventually rival the world. That would align with René de Petricor's theory that someone born within Teyvat could still become a descender. Satellinen may have already proven that it was possible. He seems to be a normal human young man born within Teyvat while being a descender. Reindaughtr may have been trying to reproduce the process of a human becoming a descender artificially. So now let's talk about the Tsaritsa herself. The Tsaritsa is a Snegavik, a cryo-aligned fae. And the female form of a Snegavik is Snegurochka, which again is theory, but it lines her up pretty well to be the third descender's lover, whose name in the hymns of the far north was Snegurochka. And it fits with what the devs have actually told us, that her mission against Celestia is a deeply personal one. The Tsaritsa is gathering the 7 gnosis, which contain pieces of the third descender, while his descendants in Khaenri'ah have already been nearly wiped out. Under this theory, her war is probably not just revenge for her lost lover or her fallen people. She might be trying to restore the father of Khaenri'ah's bloodline and finish the rebellion his descendants never got the chance to lead. Or the Tsaritsa may be gathering a gnosis either to use their descender's full power or possibly bring Satellinen back to life. Now all of this makes me think of Minsleif. I'm really curious about his thoughts on the Tsaritsa given this insane lore drop. Minsleif holds a particular disdain for the sinners, for failing to help Khaenri'ah when the cataclysm hit. And he's got obvious hate for Celestia, the heavenly principles, and by extension, the Archons. He also hates the Abyss and Abyss Order. But he loves me. If Khaenri'ahs really do descend from the Tsaritsa, then Minsleif himself is one of her distant descendants. And that reframes something he once said about her, that she's a god with no love left for her people, because with this theory, her people might literally include the Khaenri'ahs, his own kin. He might have some resentment towards her. He might have wondered where she was when Khaenri'ah fell during the cataclysm. It adds a whole extra layer to why he hates the gods the way he does, because if this is right, then even his own distant ancestors stood back and watched his people burn. Now let's talk about Project Stuzha. Stuzha just means severe cold in Russian, and this project has been name dropped by nearly every Harbinger since Arlecchino's story quest. It's a Fatui operation run mostly through the Harbingers Arlecchino, Tartaglia, Pulcinella, Pantalone, and director Piero. And Stuzha appears to be tied to something called Mistletoe. Now Mistletoe can mean 2 things in Norse mythology. It's the sword of an undead king named Thrain, which happens to be Capitano's real name. And it's the mistletoe that killed Baldur. Baldur was the god of light, beauty, joy, and purity, and he was supposed to be completely invulnerable. His mother Frigg made every living thing in existence swear an oath never to harm him. Every living thing except one, the mistletoe. Mistletoe. That plant became the one loophole her protection couldn't cover, the exact thing that killed Baldur, the god who couldn't be killed. So here's what I'm thinking. Project Stuzha might be an attempt to build Teyvat's own Mistletoe, a weapon designed to slip past the laws of the heavenly principles and kill something that's otherwise unkillable. And by unkillable, I mean the heavenly principles themselves or the shades. Then Capitano wakes up from his throne and becomes king of the world, right? Right? Snezhnaya only survives its unnatural Everwinter because of the Kresnik's torch, an artificial heat source the Belitzar, the first cryo-archon, had to build after the nation's green summers just vanished. Which honestly, I wouldn't be shocked to learn what Celestia is doing in the first place. That's a theory. If Project Stuzha is draining power away from those torches, then the Fatui might be deliberately freezing their own nation on purpose, weaponizing Snezhnaya's supposed curse of Everwinter instead. Basically, they'd turn Snezhnaya's greatest curse into the weapon they plan to use against Celestia. Also, remember the Abyss siblings' plan to revive Khaenri'ah using the Loom of Fate? They wanted to use the Loom of Fate to rebuild the fallen nation, and to do that, they need physical land for Khaenri'ah's new ley line to take root. But now I'm not so sure the Tsaritsa would agree to that. Resurrecting a fallen nation full of the memories of people who watched the cataclysm happen firsthand, that might be another disaster or cataclysm waiting going to happen. So what might happen in Snezhnaya? Right now, Snezhnaya is falling apart while the Tsaritsa is away. An unnatural Everwinter is draining the Kresnik energy used to power the torches that keep the cities warm. Despite the shortages, the Vekke, the nation's governing assembly, voted to continue Project Stuzha, which seems to be consuming the resources Snezhnaya desperately needs. Meanwhile, the Tsaritsa is far from home, leading a campaign against a monster supposedly responsible for the disaster. Wait, hear me out. It'd be crazy if the Cryo-Dragon Sovereign was somehow behind the Everwinter. Maybe Celestia forced it to freeze Snezhnaya as punishment during the First War, when the Heavenly Principles defeated the Dragon Sovereigns and took control of Teyvat. Maybe the Cryo Sovereign was forced to freeze Snezhnaya as punishment. Now, I'll admit this is super selfish. I love a pep, and I just want to see more giant dragons. In this case, Stuzha may be draining the torches to fight this monster, or it may have weakened whatever was keeping the monster contained. Either way, part of the Fatui seem willing to let Snezhnaya freeze if it means completing the project. That could split the nation apart, with Piero, Pulcinella, and other harbingers accepting the suffering as necessary, while others like Child oppose the cost. At some point, Paimon is badly affected by the cold and goes missing, forcing the traveler to search for her. Renova, the ruler of death, also appears to be hunting Paimon and trying to kill her. That could finally force the story to reveal who and what Paimon actually is. Man, if Paimon ends up being Asmodee in hiding or something and Renova's just trying to get her to unmask her disguise, that'd be crazy. Just a theory, but a super old one. The main antagonist in Snezhnaya seem to be the Four Shades. The Traveler will also gain access to Snezhnaya's new power system. The third descender Satalainen once visited ancient Snezhnaya and introduced a power capable of transcending Teyvat's rules, the Stellar Glimmer reactions. Because the Traveler is also a descender, they can seemingly master this power through the Statue of the Seven. Considering the theories we discussed, the Heavenly Principles killed Tsaritsa's descender lover, divided his body into the 7 Gnosis, and later destroyed his descendants in Khaenri'ah. Gathering the Gnosis may therefore be her attempt to use Satalainen's full power or even bring him back to life. Her war against the Heavenly Principles would be revenge for both her lover and the nation they tried to erase. The missing Pyronosis will likely be extremely important. I also want Minsleif and Kaya to be really involved, considering they might be the Tsaritsa's distant descendants. Genshin has also released a Snezhnaya web event page, and there's so much more hidden in it that I want to cover everything in a future video. Also, if you were watching the Snezhnaya reveal, then there's a chance you saw me in the live stream. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. I'm your leafy lorekeeper Minsleif, and I read the Genshin Impact lore so that you don't have to.